Welcome back to Vic's Projects, everyone. I hope you're well. Now today is going to be our first day of working on the Isetta. For those of you who've seen the last video, you'll know the backstory behind this old girl. You'll also know that I've installed a lift, and our first lift was pretty dodgy. This thing runs far too fast, and also I was just using a straight metal bar which could have slipped off at any time. If I'm going to be working underneath, I have improved the design somewhat. So these fit into the channels that live underneath the windscreen, not the windscreen, the side windows. And then a little central bead here, I don't know what you call it, central channel, just to keep everything central. So this should keep it nice and safe, nice up on the lift. Speaking of which, let's get her up and have a look. Now it's time to crack into it. So I'm going to start at the back and make my way forward. So let me tell you a little bit of history about the BMW Isetta. Back in the 50s, BMW were pretty much bankrupt. Their sales of motorbikes had fallen through the floor. The sales of luxury cars, nobody had the money to buy a luxury car, so they were making a loss. And what BMW needed was something small and cheap to dig them out of a hole. And BMW's solution came to them at the 1954 Turin Motor Show from a little company that made refrigerators called Rivolta. And from there, BMW acquired the rights and its saviour was born. So without this car, modern BMWs might not have even existed. Moving forward from here, I've got some nasty sheared bolts to deal with. And for those, I've got a neat little trick. So it's pretty simple. All you need is a nut and a welder. First, grind down the head of the bolt and the nut. Weld them together and the heat should break the seized threads. Or not. Well, they didn't want to play ball, did they? Hopefully we'll have a bit more luck with this one. Though maybe not, because it's all corroded and thinned out at the bottom. Oh well, let's try it. Oh yes! Next on the list to come out is the steering and then these hubs and towers. Okay, I've been putting it off long enough. I've now got to tackle the front suspension, come knuckle, come whatever you call it. So, the first thing that's got to come off is this shock tower, which is under a fair amount of compression from that spring. Now I could go full taffy style and just pop these off. It'll pop up, not too bad, but a bit sketchy. However, you're going to need the jig to get it back on. So, out of some random rubbish I had lying around, I thought I'd make one up. So we're going to use this jig to compress this down, which means there's a lot less danger when we start undoing these key bolts. Now there's one thing to remember before you start, which is to take this one off. Otherwise, when it does pop off, it's still going to be under compression. Well, that was pretty sketchy and a lot harder than it should have been, because this steel bolt had corroded alongside this aluminium knuckle thing, which meant he didn't want to move and come out. But we got there in the end. The next job is to take off the spring and shock. Then we can take off the two swing arms, pivots, something like that. Then the main hub will come off, and then we can get to the kingpin. Okay, with that out of the way, and having given this a bit of a clean, as you can tell, this whole bottom of the car and all the components and everything has just been absolutely covered in this like clay, horrible, sticky mud. Maybe I'll send it to my geology mate and he can tell me where this car's been in its life. Anyway, time to get this off. So there's a kingpin here, which is kind of the key bit that holds everything together. In order to get that out, drift that out, there's a key that goes in there, so we need to unscrew that and knock him out. There's a cap here that protects everything and holds the grease in, so we need to pull that one out, and we've got a bit of a trick for that. So here we go. There is a really cheap but does the job. It's like a drill cum tap. They're basically free, they're so cheap. So I wouldn't do anything heavy duty with it. So I'm going to use that to drill that out, tap a bit of a thread, and then I can use a bolt to then just effectively act as a puller and drive that guy out. Then hammer on the top, drift our kingpin out. Hopefully it's not seized in there, and then we're done. Now while I'm here, the kingpin actually in the bushes actually feel in pretty good condition. So we'll talk about that when we come to rebuild it, but we might not have to do a pretty tricky job. We might get away with it. We'll see when we get there. Okay, start babbling, Vic. Start working. Now, just for completeness, if you were following along with the manual, they'd say, this little bottom bit here on the kingpin, just get your screwdriver on there, a couple of them, and that'll lever out. However, old cars, no way on earth. You just got to smack the top. Wonderful. See, it doesn't look too bad actually. And from here we just continue with the rest of the strip down. Well, the chassis is back from the powder coaters and is looking lovely. Well, all the bits that were covered in oil, they're looking great. All the bits up front that weren't, they're all kind of pitted. But crucially, there's plenty of metal left. It's only a bit of surface corrosion, and that's not too bad for a chassis that's, what, mid-1950s, it's 2023, 70 years old. Nearly 70 years old. that's not bad going. Before I sent it off to the guys, I finally managed to get out those troublesome bolts that were stuck. Also those plates you saw me grinding off, so I've replaced those, put some new nuts on there, and generally tidied up the chassis before it went to powder coating. So since that's come back, I've also had these guys come back from aqua blasting. So because they're aluminium, they get a very different type of blasting, which is a lot kinder to aluminium rather than the steel that these things are made of. So they've come up absolutely lovely, actually. They've come up like brand new. The next job on our list is these bricks, which don't look quite as lovely as those two components. So this one's we'll tackle in the next episode. I've never actually done any drum brakes before. I've only ever done disc brakes, so you get to come along and learn alongside me on those ones. I'm sure that'll be plenty of fun, other than the rusty components, which are always sent there to try us. Well, that's all for today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next time on Vic's Projects.